Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we are starting a brand new Sandbox Zoo for the Grasslands Animal Pack. So by the time this video goes live, the pack will be live as well. Right now, I'm just working on attempting to get some of the entrance and some of the first habitat built before that so that we can get right into playing with the animals as soon as we can. Looking forward to it. Really looking forward to this pack. Now, I am not one of the lucky content creators who gets early access, unfortunately, and just not a big enough channel to warrant that, which is fine. Not complaining. But yeah, so I get the pack the same time everybody else gets the pack, and absolutely cannot wait for it. It looks so good. The trailers, everything looks so good. Yeah, just can't wait. So, this is called Yellow Rock Wildlife Center. It is based somewhere in Texas in North America, and it is very loosely based off of a place called Fossil Rim. Fossil Rim Wildlife Center, also based in Texas. It's a huge facility. They do a lot of conservation work. They also have a massive drive-through safari that is just the coolest thing ever. I've never been there, but I've looked at their website quite a bit. Some photos. And all sorts of different animals, a lot of African animal. They've got scimitar horned oryx. They've got white rhinos. They've got just about everything you could hope for in a safari. Um, Also kind of funny, they have one rule, however, you cannot feed the sable antelope because apparently they are some of the most dangerous hoofstock they have. Very interesting how they actually managed to enforce that with the drive-through safari when people are just kind of in their own cars doing their own thing. But yeah, don't feed the sable antelope, which I found very interesting. So this entrance building here is loosely based off of the Fossil Rim entrance building. This same kind of distressed stone, using the rustic stone set from the European pack, the Europe DLC. It's still one of my all-time favorite wall pieces. It's just gorgeous. And it fits this aesthetic really well. I'm going for kind of like muted colors in this one, not super bright or anything. So we've got the Australia wood floor, got the plaster and that nice rustic wall. And I went with a counter here instead of one of the facility boxes just because I wanted it to be a little bit smaller. This is going to be the gift shop. Needs to be, yeah, it fits a little bit better in with this because this is kind of a smaller gift shop. Again, this is going to be a smaller park. This is going to be a mini zoo. I'm not going to go all out and try and fit every animal in the zoo like I usually do, and then the frame rates bog down after 50 or so, and it's just too much. And no, this is going to be a small zoo, and I intend to finish it. Hopefully before the next DLC releases. So it should be quite fun. Obviously, it's going to focus on the grasslands animals, which I am just waiting to get my hands on. So yeah, gonna be a good one. So the color scheme for this, again, kind of that muted, kind of grayish tan, and we're gonna offset that with a nice green roof. That's gonna look really good, contrasting with that. We're gonna keep this going throughout the whole zoo. We want a good sense of continuity. And there we go with the green. I think it looks really nice, good contrast. It's a color I use quite a bit in my zoos, but I think it just makes a nice, it's a very zoo color. You see it a lot in modern zoos. They're all built by the same group of architects, basically. So yeah, getting the glass in for the gift shop. I don't put anything in the gift shop yet. That'll come later. I'll use some workshop items for that. So again, loosely based off the Fossil Rim Visitor Center, just going ahead and putting these pillars in here, duplicating them over. And then they have this wooden structure, kind of wooden trellis up top, and go ahead and add that in as well. And this just adds a little more visual interest to the top of the entrance building here. I take that and then duplicate that to the back so that both the front and the back are kind of the same. I like symmetry in my buildings. I don't know why, but I like it. Plus it makes it easier because you can just duplicate stuff. And putting in some little bit of edging around what's going to be some flower beds here. So I'm going to start at this point defining the plant palette that I'm going to be using. Shout out to Leaf for coining that phrase, plant palette. I really like it. Makes me think about zoo design a little bit differently. So the plant palette is going to be kind of muted, kind of going to reflect the same feel as the architecture. It's going to have a lot of sagebrush and hawthorn and blackthorn and olive trees. Went with the olive tree is going to be the main kind of shade tree of the whole park. And it ends up looking really, really nice here. So I get started in here using the grassland biome. And then start putting in some flowers around the edge because you would expect it to be kind of manicured up around the main entrance building. So we just use the African daisies going around. I love African daisies, especially in real life. They're really pretty. Really, really nice flower bed flower. If you ever get the chance to use them. And then getting in those olive trees. This is when I decided that olive was going to be the way to go. And then using the greener periwinkle grass as a ground cover in here. So getting that all laid in. And then another thing I end up using is the wattle bush for some reason. Well, not for some reason. It fits really well with this. It's an Australian plant. I haven't used it very much. I really don't design Australian sections. Hardly ever. But yeah, it's a really nice looking plant. And it fits in with the plant palette of this zoo really nicely. It's kind of got that lighter yellowish tip to it. And I'm really liking it. So getting those olive trees in. And next I'm going to build the sign for Yellow Rock Wildlife Park. Signs are not something I'm particularly good at. I don't like building them, so they end up being kind of basic, which this one is, but that's fine. Not everything has to be super, super complicated or overly detailed. If you like building super detailed stuff, then great. More power to you. I don't have the patience for that. I like to get stuff done. So again, it's Yellow Rock Wildlife Park, or Wildlife Center. And this was a fun sign to design. I did enjoy building this one. I think it came out quite nice. Decided it needed a little bit of a roof there. And we'll color that the same color as the roof on the building. Get that in position by our entrance. So at this point, I have no guest spawner in the building or in any of the buildings anywhere in the entire zoo. I may leave it that way. I may not let guests in here at all. I find too many guests just tanks my performance so far, and frame rates drop too low for me. I start getting headaches, so I really like to play at 60 frames per second or higher if possible. So yeah, guests just tank performance in zoos. So do big habitats and lots of habitats because it's just you just have to the CPU just has to calculate over and over and over all this different stuff, and it starts to bog down. It takes a lot of memory. Planet Zoo likes a lot of memory, and it likes a beefy CPU too. And I just upgraded mine from a 3700X to a 5800X 3D, and very noticeable change in my performance in different zoos. Yeah, I'm also running 32 gigs of DDR4 memory and a NVIDIA RTX 3060 as my graphics card. Want to upgrade that to a 6800 XT eventually. Then that will be set, but I digress. Back to Planet Zoo. Instead of talking shop about computers, getting the planting done around the signage, and then kind of defining the edge of the parking lot a little bit more with these big log pieces. I love these big log pieces. They're really neat. And this is something you'd expect to see, especially if you have like a dirt parking lot that's not really well defined. There'll be something around the edge that will keep people from driving over the grass, driving in places, parking in places they're not supposed to. And then using this underwater hydrilla grass as kind of a contrast. I've got a lot of pale plants in this build, and so this one just kind of adds a little bit of visual pop to some areas. Using those, I forget what they're called, I can never pronounce them, but the bushes that came with the North Africa pack, those ones with the white flowers, lovely, and they fit in very well here. So by now you can see you're starting to get the main entrance plaza in here, kind of leaving it a little asymmetrical. Want to have a little bit of a seating area. Even though I'm not letting guests in, I still want that to be a little bit of a focus of the zoo is some guest facilities. I don't build a lot of guest facilities. I tend to just build for the animals. And I'm trying to get away from that a little bit and really build the whole zoo. So I decided to put in a little pond here next to the plaza here, and for some reason something seems to be broken with the shallow pool offset in the terrace tool. It was doing that weird thing where it's diving down really deep into the ground, and I don't know why. Can't quite figure that out. What was going on there? I don't know if it's just this map in particular. And this I'm working on all of this before the update comes out. I don't have the update at this point, so it's not a new problem that was introduced. And it's one I've never really seen before, so that was kind of weird. But I wanted a little bit of a water feature here, just to contrast with this really dry setting that we have. So where there's water, there's going to be lots of plants, lots of green plants. So I'm trying to mimic that with a lot of planting around the edges here, mixing it up, getting all different continent plants, some sagebrush, some wattle bush, all sorts of different stuff. And then using the really bright green Yorkshire fog grass that came with the conservation pack, love it, to kind of fill in the pond itself, because it's just going to be a little shallow pond. So this DLC and this update are looking like, at least from what I've seen from the trailers and the screenshots, this is looking like one of the best, if not the best, packs that Frontier has ever put out. Super excited to get in here and build for it and use it and start building for the animals. And yeah, this is like S tier good. It really is. Again, I don't have early access, so I'm just building right now what you can see with the base game pieces. I'm working on this on Sunday night before the DLC day, so, and just starting to get some pathing in. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with the full layout yet. I know I want kind of a main pathway through with smaller paths snaking off to different exhibits. Again, not really sure of the full layout though. I know that the first animal we're gonna put in is gonna be the red-necked wallaby, because they make sense as the first habitat animal. You don't want anything really spectacular right at the front of your zoo, especially in this game, because all the guests will just congregate there and they won't go anywhere else. Kind of have to lure your guests to different areas by putting the high ticket animals, your tigers, your lions, whatnot, toward the back, and then guests will go through most of the zoo. And I find that putting habitats off the side, not directly off the main path, but kind of off their own little 4-meter paths, kind of helps with crowd congestion. That way, guests that want to bypass an exhibit can do so without having to fight their way through a crowd. Excuse me, the air is very dry today. I have to get a little drink of water there. So at this point, I'm starting to think about planning the first exhibit here, or the first habitat, which is going to be, again, for the red-necked wallaby. I want to get some benches in here. Eventually, I remember to put bins in. Even though I'm not planning to let guests in, I still want to build for them a little bit. I might at the end just kind of open the gates and throw a guest spawner down and actually let them in. But while I'm building, I just want them to stay out because the performance hit. I just can't stand it when my frames and rates start dropping too low, and guests are a major cause of that. That and those really big habitats, like in Wildlife Trek, my big franchise zoo that I have on this channel. Yeah, it's almost unplayable, especially when I get near the big savanna habitat that I built. That's got giraffes and ostrich and zebra and gazelle and a bunch of each animal, and the game has to calculate for each one all the time in this big space. It calculates the traversable terrain for each animal in this big space over and over and over again. It's very memory intensive, very CPU intensive. So I find that keeping smaller habitats tends to cut down on the lag. makes the game run a little bit smoother for longer. It's it's just a CPU intense game. It's just going to be that way, unfortunately. It's not that it's poorly optimized or anything. It is just how it works. Planet Coaster is kind of the same way. Too many guests will start to lag the zoo. So I'm starting on the habitat for the red-necked wallaby. I'm using the same rustic stone wall pieces that I used on the main building, just to kind of keep a little continuity going. Getting their little shelter building in here. I want it to actually be accessible to them. I end up having to replace that doorway that I just put in with something with a bigger one because they couldn't go through it once I finally put them in. And actually remembered to put eaves on the building this time, which is something that I usually don't do. I usually forget that step. Mostly because I don't care for building architecture that much. You've probably noticed in a lot of my builds, I don't go over detailed with the architecture. I really prefer the habitat building. But our little wallaby habitat here, I kind of dropped down the terrain here at the front. It's doing that weird bug again, which is really annoying. And oh, one thing, I do have the free build mod installed, and that kind of makes the terrain tools a little bit easier to deal with. I think it turns up the intensity on the smooth tool, which is really nice. If you're seeing some blank spaces in the menus, those are mods that are broken that I'm too afraid to uninstall because so what happened with 1.11 when all the prop mods broke or the non-axis prop mods broke is, let's see here. Words are hard this morning. The caffeine has not fully kicked in, and it's a little bit early in the morning. So what happened with 1.11 is non-axis prop mods broke severely. However, some pieces from certain mods did not break. So you could load into one zoo just fine that had scenery props, but if you used a different prop that was broken in another zoo, you couldn't load into that. It was really annoying, but they put a fix where it just kind of reverted. And I mean Lion Rider and Leaf and all them worked on that really hard. They just kind of reverted everything back to its original model, so that we could go in, we could get into our zoos and actually like delete the stuff that was causing the crashing issues, which is nice. But because it's prop mods and I use so many of them in so many different zoos, I've kind of forgotten how many I've used and where. So I'm kind of afraid to actually uninstall the broken mods, so they're just there and I don't use them. So I just have a bunch of blank spaces in my menus, which is fine. So working on the planting for the wallaby habitat, again, it's a mix of kind of the similar plants that we see outside the habitat. You'd probably expect to see that in a wildlife center like this. It's not going to be heavily themed. It's going to be, the habitats are going to kind of have the same planting as what's outside. It's going to be very natural. Then I decided to break up the stone wall with some rocks. Kind of makes it a little bit better, adds a little more visual weight to the habitat. And then I got rid of the one side completely and just filled that in with with some rocks, and then I wanted a focal point here at the middle with this big, the red desert rock, and I started layering that in a little bit, and shout out to Leaf for kind of inspiring me to use this layered rock technique that he's been using. I really, really like it, but the red rock really adds a little bit of a visual pop to this. It's nice and bright against that kind of pale sand, that kind of duller savanna rock. So I really like it. And I'll probably be using this throughout the whole zoo. Got a little faux rock in there too. It's a palette of different textures. I'm using the African branch pieces to put a little bit of a barrier up against the habitat fence because you don't want the wallabies coming really, really close to the guests. I mean, they can be a walk-through habitat animal, but this is not a walk-through exhibit, so you want there to be a little separation there. That way guests aren't tempted to try to feed them or climb over the barrier to pet them or do any of the stupid things that zoo guests do. And zoo guests do a lot of really stupid things in real life. So I am using some blueprints from the workshop. This fence set here that I'm putting in with the railing as the guest fencing is just so well done. And I have no problem using blueprints or anything like that. They're put on the workshop for a reason. They're put there for people to use. And they're just, some people make some things better than other people. I don't like making guest fences. I like making habitat barriers, but not the guest fences for some reason. I'd happily use a blueprint for that, and this one works out really nice. The color fits in with the theme for the zoo, that color theme, and the little rope barrier looks like something you'd see in this kind of park. And this technique of kind of freehanding the fence building rather than using the advanced move tool makes it go a little bit faster. I like being able to use this. Kind of makes it a little bit more organic too, just hand placing it. And I do need to look up who made these blueprints on and uploaded them to the workshop and give them credit because they are fantastic and I'm going to use them throughout this entire project. So I'm just going around, following the path. It's starting to look pretty good there. This open area between the main path and the wallaby exhibit, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with that yet. Thinking I might do a wild butterfly garden and just use the new walkthrough exhibit, set it to null, and yeah, we can have free flying butterflies. Imagine that, free flying butterflies in Planet Zoo. Pretty sure that was something they said they were never going to do. But here we are, we have free flying butterflies. So right now it's starting to look pretty good. I'm starting to enjoy how it's coming together. I wanted to add in a cover for the viewing area though, kind of help get the guests out of the sun, which I do in a minute. I was playing with the idea of palm trees in here because it's kind of something you'd see a lot. You see a lot of that in like Southern California. Like palm trees are just ubiquitous out there. But yeah, I decided against them. They're too bright. So we'll stick with the olive trees. for this. And I wanted some custom signage as well. And signage is something that I don't like building. I don't really care for it. So I'm going to use, again, a blueprint for that. And this one is absolutely just fantastic, fits right in with the theme. Very, very nice. And I'll customize it a little bit. And I decided to grab this the solid fence piece from that same fence set, and I'm going to use it as a cover for the guest viewing area. Now right here, I kind of make a mistake, and I didn't think it through because I go ahead and put in all the top pieces, but then I realized that I needed supports for them. And at this point, I'm kind of like, yay, I get to undo some of my work. Um, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Never be afraid to go in and edit your work, edit your pieces, anything. Just yeah, do iterations, do different variations to see what works best. So here I've gone ahead and done that, got it adjusted a little bit so that it fits the path really nicely. Then I can go ahead and duplicate the entire thing across and get it all in position. It has to overlap a little bit just because it's kind of a curvy organic path. That's one of the downsides of curvy paths. Makes building structures like this kind of difficult, but we get through it. And I left that part in because I think it's good for maybe beginners to see, because a lot of YouTubers would cut that out. And, I didn't want to. I wanted it to be in there because, you need to see it's not making a mistake isn't the end of the world. It's really easy in this game to just go back, change something, even with the paths or the barriers, even though those are kind of a pain. It's not that bad to go in and edit something and get it the way you want. So I'm starting to put in some signage here for the zoo. I'm using just the really basic Planet Zoo base game signage. I think it's unobtrusive and it kind of fits in nicely. Usually I go for like the Indian signage, that really pretty one that fits on the pole nicely. But this one I just wanted to go ahead and use the standard Planet Zoo signage and go with that. And I think I'm really starting to like those pieces. At this point, I finally remembered to get the barriers in here and turn this into an actual habitat. And then realized that I need some staff facilities because I don't have any. I have no staff except for a couple of vendors and no staff facilities. So I just throw together really quick a little staff complex here. And I throw in quite a few staff rooms, break rooms, just because I always get the alert that staff can't find an accessible break room with space. Well, now they can. So now that alert will go away. And just connected it up to the path there. I thought about right here um, making an actual gate that the staff would go through, but I'm just gonna kind of imagine that there's a gate there instead, because I didn't feel like doing that. People who build really intricate gates and just really intricate things it's fascinating to me, but it's so tedious that I just can't do it. I don't have the patience or the temperament for it really. Like this sign here, this person used the small number pieces to make that. And it's so neat. So I want to have the actual, redneck wallaby animal name on the sign. I just like it as a little sense of realism. Unfortunately, this is the only sign that really fits there. The just the Planet Zoo base game sign, and it's not flat, so it doesn't fit flush against the backdrop. The next smallest is the Australian wood pieces, which I tried right there. I didn't quite like it, so I ended up going back to the original, and I think it turned out pretty well. And I'm trying to make a point to design around the habitat as well as just the habitat itself, and make sure that, the outside and the inside are cohesive. And I always put in, this is something I do in my franchise zoos, but I also do it in Sandbox just because it makes things a little bit easier. I always put in a keeper hut and a staff room outside each habitat, and then build a little management building around them to kind of hide them. And that's something you'd expect in a real zoo. You would have, keeper facilities, staff facilities right beside the animal habitat itself. And what that does, it just cuts down on how far the keepers have to walk. In franchise, that can be really valuable because then you don't end up with the issue of keepers not feeding the animals, which is one thing I hate about franchise. Trying to get the keepers to do their jobs in this way, they do their jobs better. Amazing, we make it easier for them and they can do it. So at this point, I've now gotten the pack, it's all downloaded, and I've put the wallabies in. And we have 6 in the habitat. One of them is a little albino male. Using a mod to increase the albino spawns, which, it's quality of life at this point. Just a quality of life mod. I really, really like it, and it's a pretty safe one too. It's not going to break anything. Uh, you can uninstall it safely without worrying about breaking your game or anything like that. At this point, I realize though that the wallaby habitat is just too small. So I go ahead and make it bigger, expand it out, move everything kind of back so that it's against the path. And then, I have to adjust the barrier and all that fun stuff. But again, don't be afraid to edit. This is just part of the building process. And it actually went pretty quickly to do all of that. Just moving the rock work back and then rebuilding a section of it. Again, not a whole lot of work to make it just to vastly improve the habitat. And at this point, I'm finally getting in some of the wonderful grass pieces that came with the free update. The blue stem grass is just absolutely lovely. I'm going to be using that a ton. Love it, love it, love it. The buffalo grass is really good too. And at this point, I'm kind of winding down, getting the last little details in the habitat finished. And I want to go in and add some grass around the edges to kind of break this transition because we have a really hard transition right now from the sandy areas to the grassy areas. And I want it to be a little bit softer than that. Just love that blue stem grass. It's so lovely. We've needed a big grass piece like that for a long time, and that is just fantastic. using the triodia grass just to have more kind of visual interest and break it up a little bit. And then remembering to, link up the gate to the paths again, which I forgot to do there. But using the dry buffalo grass to kind of soften that transition there, and I really like it. I think it's coming out really good. The wallabies are really cute. They're running around checking out all the new stuff. Yeah, so this habitat worked out quite well for them. They get a little enrichment in there for them. Got a suspended feeder and a couple of different feeders, and then there's some herb scent markers to get them to go around to the different parts of their habitat. It's finally big enough, it looks good. So I want to go in and add now some of the new grasses into the areas around the habitat and around the guest areas. Trying to see if there's another tree that would work well in here, but not really. I end up going back and using the olive trees again. I like them. They're pretty. We have olive orchards out here, kind of near where I live, and they're pretty to drive by. They're that silvery, greenish, grayish foliage. So again, trying to remember build around the outside as well as the inside of the habitat. And it starts to look really good. And then here we are into the cinematics. Man, this was a fun build. Absolutely enjoying it. So we've got our little entrance area, our little welcome visitor center. Kind of basic. We don't need a whole ton. We've got an info booth. We've got a couple of food stalls and our little tiny gift shop, which eventually I'll actually populate with uh, gift shop items. And again, those will be workshop pieces because I'm not building that tiny stuff. It's lovely, already built on the workshop. I'm more than happy to use it. But then we come around to the wallaby habitat, and here in the explore mode camera, just really, really liking how this is turning out. One thing I realized right at this point, though, is that my railing is too high. I need to drop it down a little bit. It kind of obstructs the view. Well, there goes our little albino. So, oh my gosh, if you guys have enjoyed this one, please leave it a like, comment down below, let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.